If you're in television, I am 100% certain you have heard this term. I'm also 100% certain that you can learn more about it. Hi, my name's Rob. I am an intercom engineer in the live television industry, and I also like to teach things to people that like to learn them. And we're right here at the intersection of those two things. We're talking about intercom concepts, constructs within the intercom that help a very powerful point-to-point intercom system work for us. Without these tools, we would be really lost as far as trying to talk to people. The intercom is great at connecting talkers to listeners, but we're going to use these constructs as tools to simplify and expedite the user experience in the intercom. And this construct is called the IFB. We're here talking about the name of the IFB, among other things. These are all the things that are going to be seen in this video, but we're talking right now about the name, because if we can't agree on a term, then how are we even going to talk about it? So let's jump into it. It is short for interruptible fold back. A signal folded back to your ears, or like a fold back speaker or a monitor speaker, or being presented to talent in their ears, fold back, and it is interruptible. We can give them something and then at times give them something else. All right. It is also known as talkback, which is strange. The people that call this talkback are probably European, and it's confusing because there is another concept in intercom or talent comms of the talent talking back to the producer, and as Americans we call that talkback, but Europeans actually call producer talking to talent talkback. That's a little hard for me. You'll never hear me refer talent or producer to talent as talkback. It is an IFB. Okay? Now, other industries, I don't really know of any other names for this concept. Talking to talent while they are on air is always called IFB. But I will say, in the idea of other words or other uses, there is a little bit of confusion in the US and other places when people refer to hardware as an IFB. And they're not wrong in this, but it's also not what we're talking about today, but I do want to say it. Some people call the ear wire the IFB. You could call it a clarifier or a driver or a noodle or a Telex. But the ear wire that goes in the talent's ear is fair to call that an IFB. Another thing that's fair to call the IFB is the talent receiver pack, or the RF ear pack, or the Comtech, or the IEM. These are all fair terms. Hey, I need an IFB. Well, that could be the radio pack, that could be the driver and the ear noodle, but we're here, you've come to this video because we're talking about intercom concepts. So, enough. Let's see, manufacturers. All brands that I know of, all the big three brands, refer to this concept as IFB. So, all three big brands use the same term. It is an IFB. Another name that we could see would be a lazy or a mix minus. I will say these are not terms that refer to this concept. They're talking about other things. A lazy is a European term that is the talent talking back to the producer. And then mix minus is a name for the program signal that we're going to feed into the intercom. It is IFB adjacent, but it is not the intercom term of IFB. So I hope that you have found this useful and we can agree on terms and move on in the process. All right, now we know what we're talking about using the words. We now need to make sure we're using this in the right place. Where is an IFB the right use? It's an important thing because intercom, you can make stuff happen, and if it's not the right use, it might not have full positive consequences. So I think that the first use of an IFB, talking to talent, letting them hear the show until they need to receive instruction, is a perfect use of the IFB. It justifies the IFB existing in only that one thing. Talent comms are a kind of a tricky beast, and so if it was never right anywhere else, talent communications would be the right place for an IFB and justify its existence. But we're trying to round out our knowledge and know the things beside what we know, so let's come up with some other uses. The second use I came up with is a green room speaker. There's entertainment coming out of a speaker where the people are hearing it, and then some instruction needs to come out instead. We're just making line level audio or digital audio, IP audio out of our intercom and sending it places. So we could have an entertainment providing speaker providing entertainment, and then boom, IFB comes in, interrupts that, and gives the instructions, and then boom, we're back to entertainment. That would be great. But there's a little bit of an assumption there that entertainment or content or audio needs to flow before the instruction is given. The other idea of that would be silence and an occasional instruction. So maybe like an SA speaker, a Fostex in the booth. It's not playing anything, and then the producer jumps on, hey, headsets, guys, let's get on headsets, please. And so the instruction comes out of the speaker, and then the speaker goes back to silence. You can use an IFB for that, but you could also just talk out of a port. So the reason the IFB is better is because there is a source and then the interruption, and then the interruption or the instruction goes back away and the source continues. Silence replaced by a voice is easy. Source substitution is done by an IFB. And then the third reason, and this is a little tool to just keep in your pocket, is if you have a source on the intercom coming in and you need it to go out a port. This will happen. I'm not going to get into the details of where this will happen, but you will need, shoot, I need that thing back out of the intercom. An IFB is a great place to do this. I could come up with 4 different ways to do this, each with their own downsides. I feel like an IFB is the right way to just pick a source from the intercom and get it out and output. It has the least pitfalls that I'm going to fall into myself later on. And if you don't give anybody the key, you don't put the key for the IFB in anybody's panel, then there's no chance of it being interrupted. So it's a nice connector. So this has been the uses of an IFB. Let's move on. The next question in this deep dive is who? Who all is involved in this concept and how are they involved? Let's see. Who has the key? Who is actually, who needs the key? I would say the people that need the key, people that need to talk to talent in show and in prep. Of course, this is the producer, assuming they're the ones that are going to be queuing talent, telling them we're going to be going to replay, telling them we're going to be going to break, asking for them to read different cards or whatever. Producers doing that probably. Maybe stats is feeding information. Maybe that stats is talking directly to talent instead of going through the producer to sell his stats. Could be. Well, Rob, that person's sitting right next to them. They're called talent stats. Duh. Okay, yeah, you're right. Maybe that's the workflow. But not everybody has that workflow. I was in intercom on a show the other day, and the 4 people sitting at the desk were important, but there was another character that was popular on the show, and he is never going to be on camera. He was their researcher, and he would, he'd actually get thanked from the show, and so everybody knows his name and stuff. It was pretty funny, but I didn't know who this person was. He came up and asked me for the keys for the IFBs for the talent, and I was like, could you tell me a little bit more about that? And he gave me some orientation to the show, how it worked. And I said, oh, okay, sure. But my point is, you don't want to give these keys to interrupt or access to interrupt the talent. You don't want to give them to just anybody. You want to give them only to people that are capable and need them. So the producer, a researcher. These people are going to be talking to your talent on air and need to absolutely interrupt them. Also, the people that are going to be talking to the talent in preparation or in breaks, maybe. This would be like the A1, the person that would say, hey, play-by-play, I need you to move your mic a little closer to your mouth so we can hear you. Or maybe the talk is to the A1 to the A2 who's faxing the headset. My point is, you don't want to limit yourself so much that you're having to change your configuration after testing. So if the person needs it for testing, they get it always. If they need it for the show, they obviously get it for testing. So the who has the keys, people that need it in show and people that need it in preparation. Now let's talk about the other side of an IFB and what all is involved in putting one together. You're going to need a program feed. This is where the show comes into the talent's ear. Also might be called a mix minus. That might be the right term in your workflow. Not going to get into the super details of that right now, but a program or mix minus is going to be fed into the ear. We need to know how to get out to the announcer's actual ear. You're going to need to know what port in the intercom has been patched through the patch bay, through the DT, to the Daltech, to the wetter, whatever. You need to know where that comes out of the intercom for you. What's the pathway to their ear? And you also, in order to make a completely formed talent communication circuit, you need that talent's microphone back to you. This is a little bit like a garnish on top of a full meal. Some people don't need the garnish. Some people say it's not complete until I get the garnish. So your mileage may vary. Talk with your producer about your workflow, but it's very beneficial to go ahead and plan on getting that talent's microphone back into the IFB so that you can do the required things with it when those things come up. The microphone is important. So this is who is involved in this concept of IFB. Let's move on. Yeah, I have a bit of a prediction. I predict that many of you have fast forwarded to this point in the video, this point right here. I think you might be very partial to my world famous drawing. Am I right? Am I right? Well, we'll see. Let's jump right into it. I have a block logic diagram here on my board. And just to let you know, in block logic diagrams, it is customary that the inputs are on the left and outputs are on the right. Okay? And if you notice, this producer appears both places. So does stats. This is because in a intercom where we're getting super specific, the producer is an input and he needs an output for his ear. Makes sense, right? So we are putting things into the intercom on the left and we are getting things out of the intercom on the right. And when stuff appears as an input and an output, it's in the diagram twice. You'll also see some numbers here. These actually correlate to a spreadsheet. I use spreadsheets almost every time I work on an intercom. If I'm building an intercom, I make a plan so I don't forget anything. If I'm just running an intercom that's already been built, then I want to document where stuff is connected so I don't have to change pages in the intercom every time. I would suggest this, and I'll show you the sheet that I have here. This is an imaginary intercom, but I've laid it out how I think is appropriate. You'll see this is a 64-port intercom. Actually, I can do this. You can read the text now. Imaginary intercom, I have a 64-port, and it is about the right size. If you want to scroll your eyes around a little bit while I look at this, you see that it's a 10-camera intercom. There is the production room. You have a tape room with 3 operators in it, 2 people in the video pit, engineer sits at 2 different desks, and then there's some people in the field. There is some telephone connectivity. We have some talent that you can see. In this intercom, in my imagination, I have attached the left ears of this talent and the right ear. So I have the interrupts, and then I have the non-interrupts down below. There's even a stage announce. This is a pretty advanced intercom installation, but it's not the biggest. It's very reasonable, kind of a mama bear type porridge. Then I have an audio I/O section where we bring things into the intercom and out. And then I have some party lines. So you will see that I am calling the producer being on port 13. Talent stats is down here on port 35. I have the sideline interrupt on port 43. Oh, sorry, port 44, sideline interrupt. And I have the program for the sideline coming in here on talent program for sideline, port 58, and then the sideline mic pre-fade on port 56. I believe that all these numbers correlate to the drawing. If they do, they do. If they don't, it's not going to matter much, but that's where these numbers are coming from. So I want to stop and take a little time out and say, we're worried about programming the intercom and understanding the intercom. So there's a workflow over here that I'm not entirely concerned with. I did define it so that I can feed it properly in this example. And this is going to be a T4 from Electrosonics. It's a mono transmitter. And what we're going to do is we're going to feed this thing through all of the patches, the jam, the signal flow that is required. And that's all happening, and we're going to just assume that it's happening. We're not going to concentrate on it for right now. We're going to stop our cares at this port 44 and say the rest of the signal, we don't care. All right? But, so we're concentrating on programming logic here. I do care for you guys to understand this side, and that is what goes into some of these inputs, okay? So I have called out this term right here, talent program. I want to take another time out, or maybe we're still in timeout, I don't know, and say, if you don't know what talent needs and what they don't need to do their job on air, then just use program. I would rather you use program and get them a few too many things than worry about crafting them their own program and messing it up. So if you cannot hear and accomplish this next part, just feed them program and it's okay. But if you have the ability to worry about the content that is in a program for talent, then it should be something like this. Let's just say output 1 out of the board is the talent program, which we are going to connect. So we would want music. We would want packages so they can speak to the contents of the package. We would definitely want all of the members of their broadcast team. They need to be able to respond to each other. And if they can't hear each other, then they can't respond. They would also like their own mic. Because we are talking about a sideline IFB, they need their sideline mic in there. There is a case, there is a situation in which you would not want the sideline mic, but let's just say that it is in for now. And it is contributing to this talent program. All right, now the other output that I want from this audio board needs to go to this talent hot mic. And so I'm going to ask the A1 to give me another output from his audio board and give me talent hot mic. I am going to throw patch cables or make routes on the intercom or make routes in Dante to put those things into my intercom ports that I have decided. 58 gets talent program, 56 gets talent hot mic. Cool? So now we know what's coming and going, and we can worry about what the intercom wants to do with this. So we're going to get to the nuts and bolts of the programming of the intercom in the next section, but right now we're going to do it with my little pencil. The first thing we're going to want to do is decide the input, decide the output, and connect them in the intercom table. I have now passed program through the intercom to the talent. Ta-da! And in this way, you could call the IFB completely programmed. So let's go on and say what happens next. The next thing that happens is we put that key into the producer's panel, and he has a talk key for this person. What happens when he presses that talk key? Yeah, the whole video is coming to this exact moment. This is all background, and now I'm going to tell you what the IFB does. The IFB does this. It takes the blue line, knocks it out of the way, and says, I am the one that's being heard now. The producer has replaced the program with his voice and is being heard. Now, let's go back a little bit and say, what if the producer's voice needs to be heard next to the program? The program needs to exist as well. There's reasons for this. Someone may ask for it to happen or ask for it to not happen. I can't go into the details on your particular case about whether you want this to happen or not, but I can tell you that the intercom gives you this tool. There is a place where you can choose the amount of ducking. How much does the producer overtake the program? For this portion and level of teaching, we're going to say that it is a complete mute, a full duck, a 100% replacement, okay? That is a setting, and it is individually configurable for your gear stack. But we're going to treat it as a full mute, and that is because in the scenarios that I deal with most of the time, this is a stereo IFB. One signal feeds one ear, and the other signal feeds the other ear. This ear, the right ear, traditionally, is what we call the non-interrupt ear. The show always continues over here. And so if the show is going in both ears, but then the producer interrupts this ear, the show continues. And so I don't mind that this is a full mute. The show is continuing over here. Whether you have this amount of gear and can do this is up to you. But this is kind of the full bird way to do it. A full mute from the producer. Does that make sense? Okay. Now I want to go into a section of thinking about IFB priority, because the producer may not be the only person talking to talent. We have made a room down here for this guy, Mr. Stats, or let's just say a researcher. His job is to throw meaningful facts at the talent so that the talent can speak them on air. That's good. Talent can't know everything. We want to support the idea of a statistician or a researcher augmenting the information that the talent knows. It's an important task. And so we give them an IFB key. It's the same key we gave them to talent or to producer. And so he has a chance to contribute as well. He might even get real gnarly and, overtake program, of course. He might even overtake or combine with the producer. That's not good. We need to not have a statistician who his job is important, but not as important as the producer. We need to not have him be talking over the producer. So we're going to draw this like this. We have program that normally comes in. We have, let's give the producer a priority. Let's say he is the first priority, and the statistician gets a lower priority. Let's say he talks, and he is overtaking program, and he is talking to talent, and this is the right thing to happen. But let's say that the talent or this producer needs something as well, and we've decided he has a higher priority, his job is more important. What happens is he actually comes in here And if the priorities are assigned correctly, he comes in here and he cuts in line. He cuts out that statistician and he replaces him with his voice. This is a properly assigned priority hierarchy. And that's great. This is perfect. Good job on assigning priorities. Now, let's talk about the other side. When talent or when the producer asks for something, it might be a question prior to putting the talent on air. Like, hey, did you find out if there was any update on that injury? And the talent could pull up and say, I did. It's a pretty gruesome injury. I don't know if you want to put it on air. What they told me was that it was blah, blah, blah. And so it's an off-air conversation. How does that happen? That can happen in a Wohler, or that can happen in the intercom. And what happens there, let's clean this up again. The way that happens, the talent talking to the producer is going to hit their listen key, and through the programming that you have done, this will connect the talent hot mic to the producer's ear. When the listen key is lifted, the patch goes away and the audio isn't heard anymore. And so the producer is able to fully control their experience. Does that make sense? Well, I'm going to put my pencil down, and I think that we have gotten to the end of the drawing section. So don't mean to break your heart, but let's move on to some actual intercom programming. What do you think? Can you believe it? We have made it to some programming. This is great. Thank you for watching all of the previous sections of this video. If you jumped straight to this section, or if you only had this section, you would know what to do when somebody asks you to put an IFB key in. I know to do this. But what you got by watching all those other sections is you now know what you're doing. And I think that that is one of the biggest differences in between knowing what to do versus knowing what you're doing. So hopefully you watched all that and you know what you're doing. So I have here in front of us an AZ edit file. This file has nothing put into it except for names. I'm going to make this file available for download, and I'm also going to make this file available for download. This is the spreadsheet that I'm using to organize my thoughts on this project, and I think that this is always a great thing to do. You should have your intercom notes, the particulars, in a spreadsheet, not just in the intercom file. If you spend all of your time looking for information in the intercom file, you'll never get forward. So be in the habit of making a spreadsheet to use with your intercom file, all right? This file has nothing but names, and so let's go look at a IFB. We are going to be working with this IFB here, IFB number 4, named Sideline, because it correlates with this. Yes, that beautiful drawing is coming back around. We're going to use these particulars that match this, and we're going to put them in this, and it's going to be great. Okay, so the Sideline IFB, if we double click on it, oops, sorry, we've proved that it's named. We're now going to go down here to the IFB section. We're going to click it. It is the 4th one. It's named Side. We're going to double click this, and we're going to get into what I call the IFB table. Maybe the page before this was the table, but whatever. In this box, this dialog box, are all the particulars that define this IFB. And honestly, it looks like this. These two things are the same bits of information. So when this box is asking for an input, you can look here and say the input, that was talent program, port 58. Okay, so here we go. You're following me here. 58. What about the output? The output of an IFB is where the complete signal goes out of the intercom to the talent's earpiece. And you're looking at the number 44. And so let's see, this is the in, this is the out, and then So we'll go back here, we'll put the number in, 44, and then I want you to define this one if you have the ports to put this into your intercom. If you have the ports to put at least a sideline reporter into your intercom pre-fade, you need to do it. Maybe play-by-play, color, and spare, guest, all those people on Daltex, maybe they don't need it because they have a talkback button, but please find the ports to put a sideline reporter's mic hot into the intercom. We talked about how that would work in the intercom here, and so this mic is 56, and this is the listen. So what that means is when I want to listen to this particular IFB, the producer is going to lift on the key, and the intercom engineer is going to have told the intercom what source to give the producer when he listens. So that's what goes in here. So this number here is 56. And now I have completely defined this intercom. It is complete. I did not talk about dim, but I should. The dim, in our case, is going to be a full mute. Because we have the program over here in the non-interrupt here, we're only interrupting one ear. We're going to give it a full mute intercom or dim. And so now if we look back at this, we can see the same information presented back to us. 58 is the input. Yep. 44 is the output. Yep. And the listen source is this 56. Yes, that's what I had in my notes. And you guys remember that its notes are from the spreadsheet. Reference that yourself. I'm doing such a good job at pushing these buttons, I'm not going to press my luck. So now we have defined the IFB. Let's give it to somebody. So we're going to give it to the producer. We're going to go to the key panels page. We're going to go to port 13 because I do remember that that is the producer. And look, he has no buttons. We're going to put the IFB sections down here in the lower left, and we're going to put them in order. Play-by-play, analyst, spare, sideline. And look what the intercom's done for us. It has given us the check mark in the D box. This is important. What this means is that the intercom is not going to let this user latch that key. And this is all important. We never want to latch to talent. So we're going to take the intercom's help. We're going to leave that check mark in the box there. And now we have given the producer his 4 talent keys. Victory. A little bit more housekeeping to do, but this is a substantial point of completion. Let's go the next couple steps and finish this out to just the perfect IFB deployment. We're going to look at the listen sources. The listen sources must be AT or the specific port that gives the listen source. So over here, we said that the listen source was 56. So what we could do if we wanted to is we could put Z056 here. Completely double thumbs up, no compromises. But it's a little complicated to remember the listen sources and have to get them right, because if I had a listen source for each talent, that would be 4 discrete listen sources, and that could get overwhelming. What the intercom is doing for us here is it is saying AT will give you what you want. AT is going to serve to you that correct listen source. How does it know? Well, because AT stands for auto table. Reference the table that defines the IFB. I have told you who I want to talk to, SIDE. So could you look at the table and give me the listen source for that sideline? Why, yes, I can. I will give you port Z056. You type AT, the intercom references the table and gives you the correct listen source. Boom, Bob is uncle, this is great. I could, if I did not have a listen source specifically for something, I could, let's see, down here, the announce booth pre-fade, if I wanted to listen to them, I could do that by listening to ANNC. So I could type ANNC there, ANNC, ANNC, and then Z056. This is exactly the same as typing all ATs, but I had to get all the details right. So I'm going to try and minimize the discrete things that I have to do. So I'm going to type ATs in there, and this is perfect. I will say, if your intercom furnishes you with AFs on all the listen sources, it's fine. But when you're talking on IFBs, you need to use the ATs. AFs will do something, and it will give you some audio back, but it's not the right audio. It's complicated. I'm not going into it. When assigning IFB buttons, please use an AT above it for the listen. And the one last thing I'm going to talk about is how to keep your producer from getting four-finger sore. If he wants to talk to all of his talent at the same time, as the IFB is currently programmed, he would have to press down with 4 fingers on the 4 buttons. And if he had more talent, he would have to press them all. We're going to give him a little bit of courtesy. We're going to put a function in here, this button, that's going to take care of him. We're going to type AC. It stands for all call. And the all call here is what it does, and then we'll be done. All call, when I press this button, presses every button to the left until it gets to a space. Okay? So that is a very discrete or very specific definition. Work into that definition, don't work against it. So if you want to type your IFBs over here, play-by-play, analyst, spare, sideline, and I want to put an all call here, you just better not have anything in this key right here. I could do director and TD, and I don't know, I could fill these up with, I don't know, other stuff. Tape 1, tape 2, tape 3, graphics, and associate producer. But in order to play into this auto function, you have to leave a space, or this button will press all of these buttons all the way down. It's only a semi-smart auto function. There's alternatives, but that's not for this video. So now we have placed intercoms into panels, given them the little wrappers of convenience. We have defined fully the IFB, and I believe that you know more than most people out there about IFBs. I think it would be great if you would like, subscribe, follow, finish, all that stuff. If you want to, great. If you don't, that's cool too. We will see you on the next one.